Hey, one more thing before you go. What do you get when you marry art and science through the tempering process of a unique spiritual knowledge with practical living experience? You bridge the gap between philosophy and real life experiences within the pages of a guidebook that can help you understand that living through alchemy can create a transformational journey to freedom. Stay tuned. In this episode, we're going to have a conversation with a woman who did just that and more. I'm your host, Michael Herst. This is The Thing About Alchemy and the Female Nomad. My guest in this episode is Vivi Tai. She's a writer, a truth seeker, healer, and fearlessly determined to live a free lifestyle regardless of others' opinions. She was an international student here in the United States, earning a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering at Texas A&M and a Master of Biomedics Engineering from Cornell University. She worked here as well as go to college up until her visa ended, and she moved to Canada. She started a new life there as an immigrant from Vietnam and embarked on a one-of-a-kind nomadic journey. It was then that she uncovered her true life's purpose to help others to find their path of freedom, to live their authentic selves, because only then can we all be living a fulfilled life of happiness. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. I'm glad to be here and thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. You've got an amazing journey, and your journey, obviously, as we said in your intro, was very international. So I know that you moved to the United States to become a student, correct? Where did you move
When
from?
I was in high school uh, uh, at 17 years old from Vietnam. So the story about that was I actually got a scholarship for to be an exchange student in high school. It was more like a synchronicity for me when that happened because I didn't intend to go to the US and I just attended like an English competition in Vietnam, and the prize for that was a 1 year um, going to the US as an exchange student. And the contest was more like something fun for me, and just a friend invited me to go to the contest, and I just happened to win that contest even though I didn't take it seriously. So I was very surprised how that happened, but ever since that changed my life completely, and that year was the turning point for me, the year 2003. I traveled alone by myself for the first time, being a teenager, and just went out there and explored the world. And I can remember the feeling. It was fascinating and exhilarating. I couldn't believe that I actually got to see America.
Yeah, that's really unique that they had a contest that brought that opportunity about. That was a contest within Vietnam or contest based out of the United States.
I think it was a collaboration between the school in the US and some agency in Vietnam. I think it was linked to like an English school in Vietnam. So I think going abroad to study at that time started to get popular in Vietnam. And a lot of kids wanted to go and study abroad as well,
Right.
but a lot of parents were not um, ready for it because some kids were like they they could leave Vietnam at 16 years. I think that was the youngest at 16 years old, and I was 17 at that time. Um, but I remember it was something like freedom to me. That was like my first taste of freedom, and I was like overly excited instead of scared. Even though
Mhm.
I didn't have any intention to go to the US, I wanted to go to Canada if I could have a chance to study abroad. But it just happened that that was the contest from the US, I think. So I think it meant to be
So
that
that
way.
brought you to like the I know we have exchange students here from I've actually friends and colleagues of mine that have had exchange students. My relatives actually, they host exchange students from different countries.
Hmm.
So when you come
Hmm.
over, did you get hosted from with a family that then you finished your high school here, or was that a college opportunity?
It was high school. So I finished my 11th grade back then in Vietnam, but they didn't let me to attend 12th grade in the US because of my English, because uh, I didn't know so much about all the terms, like scientifically in science courses and math courses. So I had to take everything from 11th grade again. I actually never graduated high school. I got a GED in order to go to college. So I never had 12th grade either in Vietnam or in the US.
So,
I got stopped there at 11th grade.
wow. So when you came here and you were hosted to come here, then they did not put you in a high school here?
They put me in high school, but they put me in 11th
Oh,
grade.
11th grade. That
Yeah,
makes
yeah. But I already finished that level in Vietnam. So I could attend 12th grade. But because they said English was not your first language, so you have to attend 11th grade again.
Oh wow. That's that. Well, I
It
mean
didn't
that.
make any that much difference for me because I thought,
No.
um, with math level, I was already at the advanced level. I knew everything from calculus. We had to study calculus. Um, in Vietnam, like at 10, 11 grade in Vietnam already, and that's at the level that you would learn in university and college. No, not even not even at 12th grade. So it's like at 11th grade, I was like, I could do this. It's easy. So I didn't really take it seriously. Only with history classes and some literature class that I struggle with a little bit because of my English back then. Even though like I passed the contest, but the contest was like really basic. It's very basic
Mhm.
English, Then it gives you the chance to study English further when you go and live and study in the US. You
And learning
just
a
have
language.
some basic, yeah.
Yes, yeah, learning a language obviously is, well, we had this conversation before we started recording about learning new languages and how difficult it is sometimes to readapt to a new language and learn it with, well, as I said, I tried to learn Mandarin and got about 3 words in and said, I'm not going to do this. So yeah, that's interesting.
But it wasn't very difficult for us to learn English in Vietnam. It was the second language that we have to learn in Vietnam back then. So we have to start from, I wouldn't say elementary school, but from junior high that we have to learn English in school. Of course, not with speaking, but with grammar and a little bit of writing, just grammar and writing that we had to learn in public school. So, and beside that, I have English tutoring at home as well. I was a very studious kid and I spent a lot of time studying, like just go from school and back home studying and go to tutor classes. So I didn't, when I was a kid, I didn't spend that much time hanging around with friends. I spent most of my time studying, and that's the reason why my parents wanted to invest in me, and especially my mom. She wanted me to study abroad, and she didn't hold me back when I won that scholarship. And she she like, if you want to go, then I would let you go, and if you want to study, stay there and go on with college and universities, then I would support you, because um,
Well,
I was like in top of my class at that time, and that's why my parents was very supportive and let me study in the U.S.
that's always nice when you have parents that are very supportive in regard to wanting their children to move forward, in any aspect of it, especially leaving the country completely. Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I do. I have big family.
Are you the,
I have a younger brother and three older brother and sister. One older sister and two older brothers. My second oldest brother passed away before I was born. So five of us in total, and
and
countless numbers of relatives.
oh yeah, well, yeah, my family on my grandmother's side, my wife was like astounded because she's a single child. She's only one. She doesn't have any brothers or sisters. And the first family reunion we went to on my mother's side, I had 45 cousins. she she kind of looked around like, holy smokes, all these people. Yeah, whole new
Yeah,
experience.
my mom has a big family. My dad only have his brother. I think an older sister as well, but my mom has like more than 10 siblings. I think that 12 or 16. I think 16 brother and sister.
Oh,
But she was an orphan when she was little because she was the second youngest. And my grandparents, which is my mother's parents, they passed away when she was only 10 years old. So she was technically raised by her older siblings.
yeah. It's life sometimes puts us in a direction that we don't always want, but sometimes it builds a better, stronger me as they grow
And
up.
that was, yeah, and that was during the war, the Vietnam War. Um, I think the World War II ended in 1945. My mom was born in 1961. So yeah, that's during the Vietnam War.
Um,
And that was the reason why she's very strong and she's an amazing businesswoman. And that's why she has very high expectation of me, especially when it comes to financial stability. And that's why she invested a lot of her savings into my education.
which is
But
a very unique education. I mean, when you decided to go to school, to continue school here, you got your GED, and then you decided to enter college, and you picked, of all things, a Bachelor of Science in Chemical Engineering. Were you interested in chemical engineering? And tell me a little bit about that.
so it's kind of funny story how I picked that major. I did not even know what chemical engineering was when I picked it. I just had a conversation with a career advisor at Texas A&M, and he just asked me like, "What do you like to study?" And I just said chemistry and math because I love science, you know. And he was like, "Well, do you want to make a lot of money?" So like, yes, of course. So like,
Don't we
well, then
all?
maybe you should major in chemical engineering because that's one of the highest level paid job at the time to be an engineer. And I was like, okay, this chemical engineering sounds interesting. But what I didn't know at that time was that the school, Texas A&M, has a lot of funding from petroleum companies. So chemical engineering major at that school was very similar to petroleum engineering because in our junior, and senior projects, we had to do a lot of real life projects for these companies that's sponsored by these companies. And that's the reason why chemical engineering in Texas A&M is very similar to petroleum engineering, even though in other schools, um, like in the MIT, the chemical engineering department of MIT, because they're in Boston, they got a lot of sponsors from pharmaceutical companies. So their projects are much more similar to biomedical engineering. And that's the reason how it led me to biomedical engineering. So it depends.
Yeah.
Chemical engineering is very broad. It's, it can be connected to so many different types of engineering, even with IT, even with um, mechanical engineering. And that's the reason why a lot of engineering courses are pretty similar for um, the sophomore year and junior years. So once you already have this core background, then you can choose your specific major.
Gets more
You can
specialized.
go to any specific major. Yeah, yeah.
Why did you choose
Um,
Texas A&M? When you first came to America, did you end up in Texas?
no, I actually was in New Mexico my first year in high school, and I had one of the best time of my life in New Mexico because everything is so different there compared to Vietnam, and I just loved it so much. I really love that thing. I really think probably that's the reason why it's called New Mexico is because it's so different than the rest of America.
Mm.
It's so cute. The houses are just adorable. So I had my first year in high school in New Mexico. Then I moved to Illinois for my community college because, like I said, I didn't graduate high school. It was one of the college in Illinois was one of the few colleges that allow you to do um, dual degrees. That means you can continue to do high school, like just tech courses, just so you can do GED while taking college classes as well, so you can earn those credit to attend university later on.
Oh,
Yeah.
when did you decide to move? I mean, once you graduated from Texas A&M, and kind of got away from the petroleum side of engineering,
Hmm.
you wanted to pursue more of a master's degree in the biomedical. Can you help us
Yeah.
understand what that is? I know. I mean, we've got a lot to talk about, obviously, and I want to see how alchemy plays into all of this, including that in life, because it is so intricate. Alchemy is. I mean, when you
Yeah.
look back on alchemy, it's got a history to it,
It's,
and I kind of want to get to
yes,
that.
because
But
it's actually science as well. Like, 'cause my background is chemical engineering and how I ended up being like in alchemy. So after I graduated from Texas A&M, because I didn't want to get involved in petroleum engineering, first of all, because I didn't feel confident working in this field. It wasn't any of my interests. When I was in senior year, I knew that being in chemical engineering was the wrong major for me because I hated all my senior courses. Um, I struggle in my senior course for that reason. So I took a leap of faith and I applied for a research position, research assistant position at MIT. Um, I think this was synchronicity that happened because I happened to know a friend who knows someone at NIT that was hiring, and they passed on that uh, job position to me. So it was like an internal direction. It wasn't any of job application online. And when I read the description of the job in the research, and I just thought it was just so innovating and it was just so exciting, like how they was trying to um, not cure but create long-term treatment for type 1 diabetes using cell encapsulation. It's very interesting research, and I was so honored to be part of that research because it's one of a really big research at the MIT in chemical engineering department at MIT at the time. And it was under a very famous professor from uh, from MIT, and he's very well known in the biomedical and pharmaceutical industry. So I was thrilled. I was very lucky to get that job, considering that I didn't do very well in my undergrad. I didn't think my GPA was very high, so I was surprised that they decided to hire me for that position. They said that they like my response to their research. They tested me a little bit. It was because I love research, but in my senior classes, we didn't do any research actually. It was more like plant design and safety design for chemical plants and petroleum plants. But my strong expertise was in research. So they really liked my response and they decided to hire me for that position. And I worked on that research for 2 years at MIT. So that's how it got me to be interested in biomedical engineering. Even though I was working in chemical engineering lab, but after I got to work on biomedical project because the research was somewhat in the between. It's like the marriage of chemical and biomedical and a little bit of biology. Because it was we was conducting the research of drug delivery, how the drugs that we encapsulated was delivered into the animal bodies.
That's really
That's the result
interesting.
that we wanted to obtain. Yeah. So you have to understand a little bit of biology, how the body really works, animal body, not human body, because we studied on rats and mice at that time. Um, and then you will have to understand the biomedical aspect of it in order to understand the research, because the medical benefits of the drug and how it impacts on the body. So that's how it got me to biomedical engineering at Cornell because of that job. And in grad school, I did so much better than chemical engineering because I love these research studies about stem cells, about all the innovative medical devices. I was really passionate about ICDs and heart defibrillator devices. I love to study about heart diseases. It was very interesting. And during that time, I had the opportunity to work on a prototype, like for a pain management device. And that's how I realized that, oh, I enjoy being creative more than doing all the research. That was the fun part for me. And I wanted to continue to work on uh, product and development or research and development for medical devices, and that's what I wanted to focus my career on. So after I graduated from Cornell University, I decided to go back to Boston because it's one of the biggest cities for medical devices and pharmaceutical industry beside the Bay Area, which is in San Francisco. So I moved back to Boston, hopefully that I would get a job there. And I was very persistent to live in Boston because I love the city. So eventually I landed a job at a really big hospital in Boston after 9 months of job searching. It was pretty gruesome at the time because I graduated just right after the recession in, I think it was 2008, 2009.
Yeah, 2008 area, yeah.
Yeah, so it was very difficult to find a job at that time. But I was lucky enough to have one job offer, and it's the only one that would offer me an H-1B visa to work and stay in the US because I was on international student visa, which is an F1 visa the whole time from Texas A&M to Cornell University. So in order for me to continue to stay and work after 1 year of graduation, then I would have to switch my visa. That means I would have to have an employment. So I got my job offer after 9 months, which is still less than 1 year. And in order to have a job offer, the employer would have to provide an H-1B visa for international worker. And at the time, it was a huge deal to get H-1B. There was a lot of restriction around H-1B visa. They restricted the quota, so the less number of H-1B, and there's only a certain period of time within the year that the employer can apply for H-1B. So if you are employed outside of that window, you would have to wait for the next year when that window when they open the quota for you to apply, and then you have to wait for a certain period of time for them to approve it. So if your student visa expire before that window's open, it can be issues,
Right.
So
Right.
so it's very, very complicated. That's the reason why a lot of employers were shy from hiring international students or international worker because they didn't want to deal with all that mess. Even they also have to pay for it, but the cost is not that major. It's only a few $1,000s for them to pay for the H-1B visa, and sometimes they actually deduct that cost into your salary. So often, H-1B worker get lower salary for that reason, annual salary
Because
for
of
that
that
reason.
Which is unfortunate because
Yeah.
they're putting you to work, and they wouldn't be able to hire your expertise or your experience without you being there. They're able, they should pay you for that. That's kind of unfortunate in that regard. How does alchemy play into all of this?
So I wasn't very happy with the job that I got at the hospital. And I questioned a lot about my life at that time. Like, why did I suffer so much going to work and having anxiety every day? Like, I really stuffed myself with like so much coffee and sugar treat before going to work, just to ease myself down. And the hospital environment, I don't know if you're familiar with it, is very stressful, very demanding. Because
I am actually.
I was working as a clinical engineer there, so it's like and it is within the biomedical engineering sector. It's not, it's related, but the job wasn't anything related to what I studied and what I learned. So I basically have to learn everything from scratch from the beginning.
Right.
All about IT network actually barely have anything to do with any knowledge that I learned in school. So it was first of all frustrating and stressful because of the environment, and my boss was not very nice. Um, and because I didn't like the job either, so a lot of things so started to put pressure on me. So after a few months working in the hospitals, I realized this wasn't for me at all. This path wasn't for me. And I was so afraid of losing my H-1B visa. So for an international worker to stay in the US, you would have to have a visa. With H-1B visa, the tricky thing is that if you lose your employment, you would have to leave the country right away. There is no law that states anywhere that you would have like a grace period or a between time in order for you to look for a job. No, it's kind of the hidden law is not very clear. The immigration law in the US is very unclear for that reason. It's kind of very messy. A lot of things is really, you don't really understand how it works.
Very convoluted. Very convoluted.
so, so I was really worried every day going to work. Like I knew it was going to happen because had I did something that upset my boss because I confronted him with a report, and they asked me privately to quit the job, which was not legal to do that. That was retaliation
Right.
because they just wanted to get back to me. So that's why I was afraid. If I was going to leave the country, I would lose everything. And at that time, I already lived in the US for 12 years after studying from high school, and for almost 7 years in school. Uh, yeah, so that was about 12 years for me being in the US at that time. So I kind of considered it's my home, and I wanted to settle there in the country. And I have my eye on the green card, and it was the reason why I wanted to have the H-1B, and I wanted to have a master degree just so I could make myself more valuable to employer and the the market at the time. It would be easier to get sponsorship once you have higher degree and higher status. Um, but since my first job didn't go really well, and I could see how I was very much chasing that green card and that freedom, but eventually I feel more and more restricted. So I was questioning like why, whether what I was doing is right and whether I actually would have freedom in this country that I thought was free for me, because
Right.
it was when I was 17, because that was like my gate to freedom, but it wasn't anymore at that time. So during this time, when I was about to lose my job, I stumbled upon this book called Alchemy. because I was searching for a guidance. I was searching for something that could help me to understand all of this about my life. Like, why wasn't I happy? Why I did everything right. I studied so hard in school and I did all my best to please other people, to please my bosses, but nothing really worked. So I went to Barnes and Nobles a lot to search for a book, self-help book, um, to read and like to search for an answer because I was so frustrated about my life. I was so afraid that everything would be stripped off of me, that everything that I was trying to build for more than a decade. Then this book, The Alchemist, was recommended to me several times by my friend. So I downloaded the book and I read it. And I thought it was very fascinating. The storyline was very intriguing and it reignited my passion for traveling. Now, at the time, I didn't understand what alchemist was.
Yeah, it's it,
I
and how that applies to what you're doing now, because you're kind of a nomad now, and you live a van life.
mm,
So you kind of how does alchemy? Let's talk. What is the definition of alchemy? I know it goes way back. There's a history of it. There's some
mm,
wisdom to it, and sometimes when we look at the
yeah.
movies, we see they have the evil alchemist over there trying to turn gold from silver into gold, or lead into gold, I guess. So how does it
So
play?
the concept of alchemy is very metaphorical. Um, of course, it's related to chemistry. That's why it's called alchemy. But Alice actually mean God. So alchemy is the process of transmutation and transforming of one object into something else. That's why we were taught alchemy is turning lead into gold because that is like a heavier metal and gold is like a lighter and more precious metal. So metaphorically speaking, turning lead is like turning a heavier self, like an old self, into a higher self. When when you use that concept to apply on human evolution. So alchemy is a concept that teaches you to transmute and transform yourself and let go of your impurity, which is the implication of indoctrination, negative beliefs, um, and like emotional baggage on your body in order to help you improve, to find more peace and freedom within yourself, to be more in touch with who you are as a person and with your spiritual being. So the concept of alchemy is more like a spiritual concept to teach you to grow as a person. But if you observe nature, you will see that alchemy happens everywhere because alchemy is change. And everything in nature is changing. The season is changing. The flowers, the trees, the plants, everything is growing and everything constantly transform from one form to another. And we human, have all the part of physical, chemical, biological, but we also energetical and spiritual as well, right? And we have all of these elements of earth, air, fire, water within us, and all these forms have to change, transmute, because all of that contains within us. That's why we are part of this alchemical process, and that's why understanding the concept and the principle is so essential for you to understand how you grow, how your soul grow in the human evolution, and how the collective, us, the world, grow all together. Because we are also part of the collective.
And that's interesting how that all plays together. Is that when you realized that you had to let go of the societal, parental, and the cultural expectations to learn what actual freedom is? It's not just the word freedom, but the feeling of freedom, the wanting of freedom. It all plays together like that?
Yeah, because I wanted the freedom, right? That was the reason why I wanted to chase higher status. But the more I was chasing material status, the more I was being restricted. So I was like, it didn't make sense.
Well, I think
Something was not working.
Yeah, I think material status sometimes steps in our way because everybody wants something material. You want money, you want a big house, I personally don't want a boat, but people want a boat, or they want a nicer car, or they want something that's very physical, and they yearn for it, they seek it, they strive for it, they try to manifest it, and sometimes it's blocked because they have focused so much on that. So from your perspective, you kind of let that go, right?
I had to let it go. I had to let my life in the US go because it didn't work for me anymore, and because I didn't think I would have the freedom there. But when I faced that fear, the fear of shame, the fear of failure, and shame because my family had high expectation of me, and I kind of went home with nothing. That was when I actually finally obtained the true freedom, because I let go of what was holding me back. And that to me, in my book, I refer as the first stage of alchemy, the stage of calcination. The calcination happens to push you to let go all of materialistic obsession, the 3D reality of life, like the 3D paradigm and how you look at life, and push you into a whole new direction if you choose to go along with it. And a lot of people that was in my situation as well, that I know of, they wouldn't choose to do what I did. So I know that when the calcination happens, you do have the free will and the choices to either go with it or go against it and still try to cling back to that materialistic paradigm.
Right. Is that what gave you the motivation to move to Canada?
Yeah, for sure. It was because I didn't want to stay in Vietnam. So after I left the US, because I did lose my job, so I had to leave the country. I moved back to Vietnam. I didn't think that I could thrive in Vietnam because my desire was to travel the world. I knew that my passion was to travel the world. I wanted to be a nomad. I wanted to explore the world, but being in Vietnam wouldn't give me that opportunity. So that's why I applied for my immigration to Canada, and I was thrilled to be accepted within only 1 year and a half. It was actually a friend of mine recommended me to immigrate to Canada. I did not even think about it.
Okay,
It was close enough. It was close enough to the US.
Right. Plus, you can come over you would get a Canadian passport. You can come to the U.S. anytime Other than COVID
Yeah.
restrictions that, obviously stopped that for a little while, but it gives you the opportunity to come across the border to explore
Hmm.
the United States. But you basically you're you you're a nomad living. You think you call it van living,
Van
van
life.
dwelling, van life.
Yes.
That's it,
Yes.
van life. So how is that? How does that play into? I know that you say that alchemy is the blood and soul of who you are. Does that van living help kind of contribute to that mode of living?
Oh, yes. Definitely, definitely. But I didn't choose van life for that reason because I didn't understand alchemy at the concept of alchemy at that time. I was just following my passion and I was just questioning like what lifestyle would I want to do when I go to Canada because I was in a blank slate, you know.
Right.
Um, do I want to go back and live in a corporate life like in the US? Do I want to go back like doing that again in Canada? And the answer to me was very clearly no. So like, what do I want to do now?
And your answer,
um,
universe brings you your answer.
yeah, and so as I was researching on YouTube to see like what was interesting to me, and that's how van life came to the picture. And I thought it was fascinating because the benefits or the benefits that it would offer to me because I have my dog with me as well. I adopted my dog in Vietnam, so it gave me privacy, and I didn't have to have a roommate that could tolerate a dog. Um, and because the biggest reason for it was because it would cut down living expenses, so I didn't have to work full time and I would have time with my dog and just to explore myself. Because my question back then was, what's my life purpose? What's the meaning of my life once I lost all of that? This has to be something. My life has to mean something. Otherwise, why do I exist?
I think we
So
all
I,
ask that
I
question.
I wanted to find the answer for it, and for that, I wanted to follow my passion and what interests me, and so I just started doing what I enjoy doing, what I was interested in at the time. I was curious about being a barista, so I applied for a job to work as barista specifically. So I got the job at Starbucks very easily and quickly. So I'm like, let me check it out. What it means to be a barista because I love coffee, and I was thinking maybe I would get a coffee shop one day. So I just used my time to learn and explore all my interests, my hobbies, my passion. And when life was able to afford me to live such a lifestyle, free lifestyle for that reason. And I take all my time and opportunities I had to travel, uh, to go to remote places and explore BC. Is a gorgeous, absolutely like out of this world beautiful province.
I
It's
can imagine.
insanely beautiful in BC. So I just explore my heart out, really. Um, and all this time that I go to remote places, like very remote places, and just kind of, it's like my little retreat beside work. Because I had a very flexible job at that time. During the winter time, I get to work more and I save up because I didn't get to travel. And in the summertime, I work only part time and I travel all the time. And all this time being in nature, it was incredibly healing for me. And something happened. It's kind of like magic when you go into nature, and it just got you to be so much more in touch with yourself and so much more in touch with Mother Earth, nature as well. And that's how it got me to dig deeper into my questions in my life, and I questions everything, like all the existence of my life, and how I wanted to know how the universe works. I wanted to learn more about life, and the more I questioned, the more it led me into the spiritual journey, even though I didn't know anything about spirituality. But I think just the fact that I live such a lifestyle that it led me on a healing journey, naturally, inadvertently, that I did not know about. Now, looking back when I wrote my book, I realized that's part of the process of alchemy. That part of the process that helped me to grow, even though I wasn't aware of it. And like being in nature is very grounding, and a lot of research has already proved how grounding is actually very healing for your energy body. It cleanses your aura, it grounds you to the earth, and it helps you to be more balanced. So now all of that makes sense to me, how this lifestyle has helped me heal tremendously within myself. And not just that, is the people that come into my life, they they wanted to know me for me. So it's like the relationship with the people, with me and my friends, are a lot more authentic as well. So ever since I lived this lifestyle, it completely took me on a whole different adventure, a whole new path. Not just of the nature healing aspect of it, but a lot of challenges that kind of throw at me, that push me to grow. It definitely pushed me out of comfort zone to be very creative with problem solving.
Yeah.
um,
I think was it difficult to kind of adapt to that kind of living? I mean, we all grow up with, I mean, when I was a kid, we used to go camping a lot, but that was always vacation time for us. But you had to adapt from like a house or an apartment or something that was solid that you come home to every day, that is going to be there, that like nowadays you pay an exorbitant amount of money for in regard to it. Was it difficult to adapt from that to living in a van for a while?
oh yes, definitely. It took me almost half a year to adapt. It wasn't easy in the beginning. Um, it was not because I couldn't drive such a big van.
Right.
I moved into it, and I'm always a very good driver, so driving a big vehicle wasn't a big deal for me. But it was like I have to figure out where to park, uh, because I wasn't very familiar with Vancouver. I just immigrated there. I gave myself 3 months to find a van in Vancouver, and during that 3 months, I was renting a place, and I didn't have a vehicle when I was in Vancouver, so I didn't know like what it would be like to park in Vancouver, like to have like an overnight place to park. Um, and I was afraid of using my portable toilet, so I had to
That,
figure out
that would be an
how to
interesting
do.
interesting
Yeah.
adaptation.
I couldn't
Excuse me.
do number two in my band. I had to use public toilet all the time, and I was like, this
That'd be
is
my wife.
gross.
That's my wife. It's like, yeah, nope, not doing it here. You find me a bathroom.
Yeah. So I had a hard time adjust with that. But eventually I did. I had to stay at night. I had to stay very close to McDonald or Tim Hortons, like all 24/7 businesses, just so I can use public washroom.
Yeah,
But I
my wife and my
struggled.
daughters both. We go on a trip someplace, and they say we're going to stop at this gas station. No, we're not going to stop at that gas station. We need a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely like that. I was quite high maintenance for sure. Um, but I struggled to sleep because, like, in those neighborhoods, those places, it's always very noisy with people going in and out, you know.
Right.
So the first couple months, I couldn't sleep very well, and I was very tired all the time. And then I had to figure out like where to get showers, where to get water, where to get propane. So all that, so I wasn't very familiar with like the how actually RV and these vehicles actually operate. Not like how to drive it, but like in-house, how to operate in-house. So all these little things I have to figure out over time. So for the first couple of months, like I spent time doing that, learning all like how to live
Right.
with and how to manage this lifestyle and all the facilities that public facilities that available at that time, so I can go get shower. I don't have shower in my vein. So until I was able to figure out a system that works for me, then I was able to really fully enjoy this lifestyle. And it took me roughly half a year to
Wow.
to finally get
I know
adjusted and
that.
feel comfortable with it. Yeah.
Well, I know you wrote a book, and because we've talked about it and we've shown it on screen. Was it difficult to write a book while you're van living, while you're van traveling? How did you write the book?
I never thought I would be a writer or an author, so I was actually planning to have like a coaching program, and the book was part of the coaching program, How to Live the Van Life. So the
Mm.
book was going to be about my van life. But during the time of writing the book, I stumbled upon this show called Mystery Teachings. Is from Gaia Network. I don't know if you're familiar with Gaia.
Yes.
It's kind of like Netflix, but more for like spiritual documentaries and
Right.
teachings. So this show was presented by Teresa Bullard, and it was about how to use tarot. Not how to use, but understand the major arcana of tarot. I was interested in tarot at that time. I wanted to learn more about it. So I watched the show, and I didn't know how tarot was related to alchemy. And when she was explaining the symbolisms and the meaning of the mandala wheel, using the 22 major arcana of tarot to depict the hero's journey on the mandala wheel, then I realized that it was so related to my journey. Like everything she said was just a lie. And she tied it into alchemy. Uh, these Each of these stage on the mandala wheels are part of the stages of alchemy. So that's how I got to come to understand the spiritual concept of alchemy and how it was applied um, to my life the whole time, but I wasn't aware of it. Because that's why I said alchemy is like a natural process and it happens to everyone. But I was fortunate enough that I had an internal guidance that helped me to navigate through these stages of alchemy. And I didn't get stuck on the first or the second stage. And I realized I was on the right path and I was accelerating um, through the stages of alchemy. And by understanding the tarot, it helps me to understand clearer the meaning and the wisdom, the lessons that I learned along the way. And it helped me to put all the pieces together and I could see the patterns of my life and why I desire to have freedom, why I had to go through that struggle, that challenge in the US to let go of that old lifestyle and embark on a new life journey to being here in the van life. And now I understand why van life, because
Right.
it's led me to a very spiritual healing journey that I did not know about. But I don't know how I got all of that internal guidance. That's still a mystery to me.
That's the universe talking.
Yeah, I think it was because I decided to listen to my heart, and that was the first lesson I learned from the Alchemist book. That was the most important message, and it appeared uh, in my life just at the right time when I was struggling in the US, and it was telling me you have to listen to your heart and just follow your passion, and how that guided me. That was the compass guided me all the way, and I decided to take a leap of faith and took that advice and I follow it, and how that's how it led me here. So if anyone asks me how to make decision, like major decision on their life, I would always tell them just listen to your heart. You know, is I wasn't raised to be that way. I was raised in a very strict conservative family, an Asian family. We very left brain.
Right.
We very analytical, and because my background is engineering as well, so my whole life I was trained to make decisions based on logics, and um, to make decision by the heart was very strange and was very foreign to me. But because everything didn't work for me at that time in my life, so uh, I just said, why not give it a try? You know, I was very open-minded to try everything because I was at the blank slate. I didn't have anything to lose, so it was easy for me to do that. But of course, for people who stay in comfort zone, it's like a risk for them to
Right.
uh, to to go into the unknown, to take that leap of faith because they don't know what it would be like. But anything in the unknown zone would always come with possibilities.
Very
You know,
true.
that's
Very true.
yeah. So if you know in your comfort zone, if you know something's not working for you, then yeah, definitely take that chance to do something differently. And that's what happened to me. And that's how it got me to understand spirituality and alchemy, and eventually writing this book, because I think it's so relatable to people. And I know that a lot of people may go through this as well. And I think that how the alchemy process um, happens in their life can be very unique, and it can be very into individualistic. It may not be the same like me, but there's a process, there's a stage there. So that's why I wanted to share my story, like what it would be like, what it would look like to grow and to go through these stages of alchemy, just so that they can apply it and reflect it on their life. And that's why I include the journal prompts along the way at the end of every chapter to help the readers to reflect, not just read my story for inspiration, but to help them to understand where they are in the process as well. Because having awareness and perception is the first thing that you would need to make a change in your life.
Exactly. I mean, you call it, the book, name of the book is Living Through Alchemy, A Transformational Journey in Freedom. which is obviously what you have done. I mean, and you kind of you take a marriage, as you say, the marriage of art and science through the tampering process of your spiritual knowledge and practical living experience. And I think here is for the people who are watching this. Here's a screenshot of the book covers and a little bit more about what it is. So tell us a little bit about how you can find this and how we can find you in order to get this book, because I think from what we've talked about in your journey, you give an opportunity for us as human beings to be able to recognize that we have the ability to use alchemy to manifest change within our lives.
Yeah, so my book is now available on Amazon. It's called Living Through Alchemy. So I do have a website, livingthroughalchemy.com, that people can go to and download the first chapter of the book, which I give an overview of what alchemy is and the spiritual concept of alchemy. So they can have like a overall picture of what this spiritual and philosophical teaching is all about. Then the subsequent chapters, I go into my own story, sharing my life experience, living through these stages, and make it clearer for the reader to understand what it's like in practical living, how it actually happened, how it manifested in my life, so they can visualize it and applied it and get to and reflect it and get to understand more about their life journey at the time. So yeah, people can check me out on my website, Living Through Alchemy, and it's available with ebook, paperback, and hardcover as well.
That's fantastic. I, really appreciate you kind of coming on here and joining in, sharing your journey with me. This is one more thing before you go. So before we go, do you have any words of wisdom that you can share with our listeners and our viewers?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, my first and most important lesson for me was to listen to the heart. And I cannot emphasize enough for your listeners and readers in general to really start taking a leap of faith, believing in their intuition and in their heart, because it's the internal compass to guide you on your own healing journey. Sometimes I hear people say that they know that they have problems in their life and they want to fix this, but they go through so many courses and nothing is fixed, and they spend so much money and nothing really works. Um, and I think that happens because they haven't really tuned into their intuition and their heart to guide you where exactly that they need to go and what exactly that they need to do and who exactly that they need to learn from to heal all of this. And so I think it's and start by understanding your passion, your hobbies, and start from the ground and be patient with it and not afraid going into an unknown, because the unknown is where we can create the possibilities and the realities for something new. And so it all starts with your heart first, because that's where we connect with the universe, with the quantum field, and that's all within us. And so allowed it to guide you which path that you should take on your healing journey, on your path of enlightenment to freedom, because everyone's path is different. No one is the same, even though you can learn from other people and other courses. Somehow you have to be adaptable and make it work for yourself and have your own system. And that's how you can heal.
Those are excellent words of wisdom. I really appreciate those. It kind of reaches down to the core of my soul. So thank you very much for those words of wisdom and for sharing your journey with us here on the program, Vivi. I really appreciate you taking the time with me.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much for joining us on this conversation. I really appreciate you all. Don't forget to go to the App Store or the Google Play and download our free app, One More Thing Before You Go podcast, wherever you can. You can hold a unique access to everything One More Thing Before You Go. It was developed and provided by Superpass, our sponsor. If you love us as much as we do, please support us. We do have merchandise available and that are unique to One More Thing Before You Go, and both inspiring and motivational. Tell someone what you wanted to say before it's too late, before you don't have the opportunity to say it again. Do what you want to do with them. Say what you want to say with them. It's always one more thing before you go. You always have one more thing to say. Have an exciting year coming up. Please subscribe and follow us on all the platforms, including here on YouTube. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram and everywhere else. Talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to this episode of One More Thing Before You Go, a unique conversation about life. If you like our show and want to know more, check out our website at beforeyougopodcast.com. That's beforeyougopodcast.com. Tell your story, share your expertise, contribute to the blog, and subscribe to the newsletter. You can find us as well as subscribe to the program and rate us on your favorite podcast listening platform.
And one more thing before you go. Have a nice day, have a nice week, and thanks for listening.
One More Thing Before You Go, a unique conversation about life podcast, is a creation of One More Thing Productions, established 2010, all rights reserved.